Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer podcast. This is E. Marcel Pertut. Hope you're doing well today. We're broadcasting on March 24th, 2021. On today's broadcast, we will review the NCAA Tournament on the men's and women's side of basketball. We'll also delve into the NFL's free agency period, and we're focused specifically on the AFC of the NFL when we go over everything going on in the world of free agency and signings and things like that. And then we'll conclude with some miscellaneous notes on things going on in the world of sports. As always, if you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, thesportsinquirer.net. On there currently, you'll see a very good interview that we did with Georgia Tech volleyball head coach Michelle Caillet about the team's performance so far this year. They are tied for first in the ACC. So we delved into that and some other players that are emerging on the team and just other notes from the squad. So make sure that you go to our site and check that out. Over the next few days, we hopefully will have content from Georgia State Beach Volleyball, Georgia Tech Softball, and another edition of the Verbal Submission Podcast, which we focus specifically on the world of professional wrestling and mixed martial arts. So look forward to seeing that content on the site over the next few days. You can also go to our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. Make sure you do a search on there and you will find out everything that we are doing on the site. And finally, subscribe to us on our audio and podcast providers and video providers, specifically YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under Sports Inquirer. You do a search on there and you'll be able to subscribe and like us, and we would appreciate that. But it's also beneficial to you. When you do those options, you'll be able to get updates right up to the minute of when new content's up on our site. So you make sure that when you go on there, I said you like us or subscribe to us, whatever way you want to do it, you do that, and we'd love for you to go to the site every day to check everything that's going on. But I know how the world works, and I do it myself with podcasts that I like and websites and things like that. I like getting whenever I subscribe to something and I get a note that something new is up. That's the way I follow a lot of stuff. So I know how it works. And so do it for us as well. And we greatly appreciate it. But yeah, once again, just go to our audio and video providers such as YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes, and you will get the latest updates on everything that is going on. All right, we'll start with the women's tournament before we get into the men. And locally, things are going very well for Georgia Tech women's basketball. Behind 22 points from Latamaj Latinen and 21 from Lori Kubaj, the Georgia Tech women's basketball team defeated West Virginia last night, 73-56, in the second round of the NCAA Tournament. And that was on March 23rd, 2021. With the victory, Georgia Tech, who's the fifth seed in their region, they have 17 wins on the year. They are now in the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2012, which means it's only the second time in program history they have reached that mark. They're going to face the top-seeded South Carolina Gamecocks in that round of 16 contest, which should take place this Saturday or Sunday. I have not received word on when that regional semifinal is going to take place. But going back to the West Virginia contest, similar to their first round contest against the Lumberjacks of Stephen F. Austin, Georgia Tech trailed in the first half. This time they fell behind by as many as 9 points about in the first quarter, but they were able to work their way back into the contest, and they were leading actually 36-32 at halftime. And they really took control of the contest in the third quarter. They outscored the Mountaineers West Virginia 22-9 and took a 58-41 lead into halftime. And they continued to expand on that lead and had a lead as much as 21 points in that fourth quarter. As I mentioned, the big performers, the upperclassmen, Latin Kubaj and Kiara Fletcher, she had 14 points. They were the big contributors on the offensive end. They scored 57 of the Yellow Jackets' 73 points in the contest. Latin, who has really emerged as one of the most improved players, not only in the ACC, but the entire country. She had 4 3-pointers in the contest, and Kubaj had her second straight double-double in the tournament with 12 rebounds to go along with those 21 points to earn the victory. And Georgia Tech shot so well from the field, 51.8% from the field, 42% from three-point land, and that means they made 6 out of 14 three-pointers. They were able to hold West Virginia to only 43% shooting and 26% from the three-point line. And once again, with Kubaj leading the way, they out-rebounded West Virginia 36-22 in the contest, including getting 13 offensive rebounds. So by the next show, we'll have some content, some audio from hopefully Nell Fortner, head coach of Georgia Tech women's basketball, maybe a player, as we'll preview that contest against North Carolina. So very excited for the Yellow Jackets on the local front. We're objective, but they've been very good to us, giving us some access. And as I said, we'll have that content up later on today, hopefully on the site, and definitely by the next Sports Inquirer show. Let's move on to the men's side of things, and my two big themes from this tournament, and you'll hear it when I break, well, three themes, and you'll hear it as I break down the content. When I made my bracket, and I actually end up having all four number one seeds making the Final Four, which I knew would not happen. And as we'll go down the recap some of the contests, it didn't happen. I thought that this tournament would be the men's side would be very tough to predict because of the lack of that non-conference play in the earlier part of the season due to COVID restrictions, just the way the scheduling worked. And then also just the setup of this situation as far as the tournament goes. We all know that they're all in the Indianapolis area or in Indiana playing these games in front of minimal crowds. And I know they do try to do a good crowd shots of the grouping of the fans that are supporting their team. But if you look at the wide frame shots that they do coming out of commercial breaks and things like that, you realize that it's empty arenas. It's not many people. Now I don't know if they're gonna expand on that since there are less teams now in the tournament as far as crowd attendance. And then even the Final Four, it's gonna be very surreal having and it's gonna be at Lucas Oil Stadium, the dome in Indianapolis, the Final Four, and only have maybe like 3,000 fans there. I don't know if it'll be that low, but the point is this tournament's very unique as the ones we've seen over the past few years. So I knew that'd be very tough to predict teams. So I went with chalk on a lot of things. But the first thing is chalk has not really worked out. And that's theme number one. We've seen a lot of double-digit seeds in the round of 32 and even in the round of 16. I think that you're seeing some veteran mid-major teams or even veteran big conference teams from power conferences that have a lot of sophomore. In 2021, if you're a sophomore, you're a veteran. But some of these teams even have a lot of juniors and seniors. I think that's very beneficial for your run to through the NCAA tournament. The second theme is the Big Ten. I think they started off with 9 teams in the tournament. They only have one left in Michigan in the tournament in the Sweet 16. We saw, and we'll go down a lot of these teams, but Illinois went down, Purdue went down, Ohio State, just these major franchises that in the Big Ten had some solid regular seasons and did not do well. And then if you want to expound on that, I'll throw in the Blue Bloods, as you want to say, Kansas. They got routed by USC. North Carolina's out of the tournament. Duke didn't even make the tournament. Teams that were used to seeing major runs in the NCAAs did not even make it to the second weekend. So that's my second theme. And the third theme is respect to the Pac-12. Maybe because they play on the West Coast and they played a lot of contests late for Eastern people like me in the East Coast to watch their contest. I said the lack of non-conference play really hurt them because they couldn't play a lot of teams from around the country too often. But they have had a really good tournament. And we'll start off kind of in that way, the West Coast theme, looking at the Western region. Gonzaga, they've been rolling. I picked them to win a national championship. They have really looked like the best team in the entire tournament. And when you break it down, able to defeat Oklahoma in the round of 32, they're going to face Creighton. I think you got to look at them as maybe just the best overall team, multiple All-Americans. You have Suggs, who's going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft, so they have a difference maker there. Just a veteran group, and they're going to face the winner. If they beat Creighton, they're going to face the winner of USC and Oregon in the Elite Eight. Oregon, very big win over Iowa, 95-80. And we knew Iowa's very solid. That's another Big Ten team that went down pretty early. We know about Garza, maybe the best player in the entire nation, and they made them look like amateur hour. Now Oregon, as I said, they're a 7 seed. They've been near the top of the Pac-12 standings for the regular season, but just very impressive performance by Oregon. And then USC looked dominant against Kansas, defeating the Jayhawks 85-51 in their round of 32 match. The Mobley brothers, including especially Evan, just when you have those two two tall players that can play in the perimeter, and they get going, they can beat anybody in the nation. I think that they would actually be a tougher matchup than Oregon for Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. But very intriguing to see what happens there. I still think Gonzaga comes out of that region overall, but I mean Creighton's tricky too. They beat Ohio in the round of 32, but I think Gonzaga still is the team to beat in that region. I think in the East, you're really looking forward to a Michigan Alabama final Elite Eight matchup. Michigan defeated LSU 86-78 in the round of 32. Michigan's in my final four, so I'm happy to see that for selfish reasons. But I think Michigan, and I know Liver, he's not available for the team right now. I don't know if he's going to come back. I don't know if it's a season-ending injury. He traveled with the team, so maybe he can find his way onto the court. That really helped them. But Florida State, they're going to be their opponent in the Sweet 16. We know about Florida State and what they do. They're going to get athletic, long players, play a lot of defense, have a rotation of 8 to 10 players, and then figure out the offense. But offensively, you're starting to see some improvements from them. They defeated Colorado 71-53 in their round of 32 game. Defensively, I think they can hang with me. I'm picking Michigan to win the contest. But if Florida State can get their defense going, and that's to get that on, if they can control Michigan and hold them to under 70, which they can do, Florida State's they like those type of games, the 70-65 type of contest. I mean, that's 2 possessions. That anything can happen there. But I think you got to figure Michigan with Wagner and some of the other players. I think they find a way to win that contest. But this is a typical Leonard Hamilton team where they can clamp down on you and make it very tough for you to win that contest. The other round of the Sweet 16 game in that East region is going to be Alabama against uh, UCLA. UCLA, obviously, they were in the first four, have worked their way through the tournament, beat Abilene Christian in the round of 32, 67-47. They really should have faced Texas in that matchup, but Abilene Christian got the upset over the Longhorns. So UCLA caught a little bit of a break there, but they took care of business, and they're going to face Alabama, the SEC tournament champions, who a lot of buzz about Nate Oates and his coaching and just their offense. They can score a lot of points, but 96 points up against Maryland in their round of 32 contest. Just tremendous performance by the Crimson Tide. And you have to figure they're the favorite against UCLA. And it's kind of, for Michigan, it's complete opposite, where Florida State, I mentioned their defense and how they have to face that. If they get past Florida State, they'll have to face Alabama, a team that could put up as a 90 plus points on anybody. And maybe that's Michigan's style. Maybe they prefer that. That'd be preferable. But still, Alabama is a really hot team. And I picked Michigan to make the Final Four. But this is the one, when I was doing my bracket, I said if there was a number one seed that was dangerous, that had danger of losing, it was going to be Michigan to Alabama. So my Elite Eight matchup is Michigan and Alabama, and I went with Michigan. But if Alabama wins, it would not be shocking to me really at all. Let's move on to the South region, where Baylor is going to face Villanova. And I look at this contest. Baylor, to me, is the second best team in the nation. They had to deal with COVID issues in the middle of their season that I think had them shut down for at least 10 to 15 days. And I think that really affected their season. They still only lost in 2 contests the entire year, but they're working their way back into form. And they lost early in the Big 12 tournament, so I think a lot of people have forgotten about Baylor. But to me, they're the second best team, and they're going to face Villanova, as I said, in the Sweet 16. I think Baylor, I don't think they necessarily roll in this contest, but I think they find a way to win this contest pretty handily. Now, Jay Wright's going to be future Hall of Fame head coach, and they've won multiple national championships under him. And you can't dismiss Villanova, but I just don't think they can hang with Baylor in that regard. And then the South, you got Musselman. He's a man who we saw make a run to the Final Four with Nevada a few years ago. He's doing a solid run at Arkansas. The Razorbacks are going to face Oral Roberts, the team out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, in their Sweet 16 contest. Oral Roberts defeated Florida 81-78 in the round of 32. They're the 15 seed. I think their run comes to an end here against Arkansas, a very talented and athletic team. I think we get Baylor and Arkansas, and as I said, I think that the Bears should win that contest, but the way this tournament's going, you never know. And then finally, in the Midwest region, this is where we have some high seed action going. We have Loyola Chicago, the 12th, no, they're the number 8 seed out of the region. They're going to face Oregon State, and they're the 12th seed out of the region. The Loyola Chicago, the Rattlers defeated Illinois 71-58 in their round of 32 contest. And it was, I'll say it wasn't that close, but Loyola was the better team from the very beginning of the contest. Their center, the post player, really controlled the flow of the game, and you thought that Illinois with Coburn and with Adu and some of their players, they'd be able to get the pace going and maybe get some of that athleticism into the contest. Did not happen. Loyola controlled the pace, made it a half court contest, and they really dominated that contest over Illinois. Oregon State, as I said, a 12 seed out of the Pac-12 conference. If they didn't win that conference tournament, they are not in the NCAAs. And you see that with the 12 seed. That's like the very bottom of the barrel for a power conference team to make the tournament. But they found their way into it. They beat Oklahoma 80-70 in the round of 32. So we get Loyola and Oregon State in the round of 16. I think Loyola is going to continue to run and win the contest, but Oregon State, you can't deny that they are a very strong team and can make a run. So we'll see what happens there. And then finally, to bottom half of the Midwest region, we're going to have Houston, the number 2 seed, against Syracuse, the 11 seed. Syracuse were able to get past West Virginia, the number 3 seed, 75-72. The thing about Syracuse is that during the regular season, I think so many teams see that zone and their style of play, especially in conference. They're used to dealing with it. But when you get these squads that aren't used to seeing it, and even West Virginia used to be in the ACC, used to be in the Big East with Syracuse back in the day with Bob Huggins. You would think they'd be used to it, but until you're out on the court and dealing with Syracuse's style of play, you gotta. It's tough to deal with that 2-3 zone. And Boeheim, Jim Boeheim's son, has been probably the best player in the entire tournament. He's been a major player. He has scored a lot of points in the tournament so far. So Syracuse, when they get offense like that and they can control the defense, that's pretty tough to deal with. And then Houston defeated Rutgers 63-60. Rutgers, man, that was a really bad loss. You're up double digits midway through the fourth quarter, and I think Houston ended up going on a 12-2 run late in the contest to get a victory. That's not good. That's a loss for Rutgers that they're going to really be kicking themselves about for many years. But that's the tournament. So now we're going to get Houston and Syracuse, kind of contrasting styles. Once again, Syracuse with that 2-3 zone is going to want to slow down the pace. Houston's going to want to run up and down. And I think Houston ultimately wins this and gets into the Final Four. I think they're going to beat Loyola. But once again, with Syracuse, man, you figure that they make these runs, like they win 1 or 2 games, and that's kind of it a lot of times. But they can also make a Final Four run. We've seen them do that as well. So we'll be checking that out. And But when we get close to the games, we'll have another Sports Inquirer show before the actual contests start up, and we'll do a little bit more extensive preview of these contests. I just wanted to do a recap of kind of where the tournament is so far before we move on. All right, and then let's transition over into the NFL and what's going on there in our Gridiron Blitz. A lot of free agency signings, a lot of moves and transactions. I'll focus exclusively on the AFC and what we've seen there, and then we'll move on to the NFC at a later time. I saw Buffalo. Biggest thing with them was bringing Mitch Trubisky in as a free agent quarterback. Obviously, he's going to sign a 1-year deal, $2.5 million, max value of 4.5. 1.5 million guaranteed. He's going to be the backup to Josh Allen. A smart move, I think, by him in a way. There's not a starter position out there for him. So you go to Buffalo, you get in that offense. You could maybe find another spot in the future. But and then Josh Allen, who was arguably the MVP last year in the NFL, you gotta assume he's not gonna be off the field too much. But he gets into a stable organization. You can kind of regroup and rebuild, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, so that's what they did. Miami signed Jacoby Brissett to a 1-year, $5 million deal. That's interesting because you know you gotta figure that Tua was going to be the starting quarterback as of now, even though it seems like they aren't fully invested in him. I think there's Deshaun Watson rumors, and we'll get to Deshaun at the very end of our thoughts and what's going on with him and off the field potentially. But they got Brissett there, maybe kind of as a not as a safe because he's not going to be the starter. Two was going to be the guy if they go into the regular season with this roster, but he's a solid backup that can kind of provide some security if things don't go right. Will Fuller signed a 1-year deal for $10.5 million with the Dolphins. Biggest thing with that is providing Tua with some offensive weapons. You want to develop the quarterback and give him a chance. You have to give him some solid weapons to work with. And Fuller, when healthy, which is a big issue. If he can stay on the field, he can be not a number one receiver, but a solid number two. And that's where they need to figure that out. So we'll see what goes on there. But the big story really in the AFC has been the New England Patriots. So many signings that we can go down the list. Cam Newton, they re-signed him to a 1-year deal for up to $13.5 million. Nelson Aguilar, they signed him to a big deal. Two tight ends, Juju Smith and Hunter Henry. They bring in those two tight ends to solidify the offense. Made a big trade with the Raiders to get Trent Brown onto the roster. Re-signed David Andrews, one of their free agent center. They brought him back in. So you go down the list of all the guys that they signed. I think they invested $200 million in free agents signings as far as what they've done there. I think what this shows is with Bill Belichick, who is arguably the greatest coach of all time, you look at what he's done there as far as a head coach, and we know his resume. The drafting has not been very good for New England. I think they've only drafted one Pro Bowler on their roster over the past 7, 8 years. Now they've been able to have success, obviously, during this frame, winning multiple Super Bowls, but that's been through a lot of signings and trades and things along those lines. I think he's more comfortable going with this approach. Guys who have already been in the league that he has seen on the NFL field and that he can evaluate and making signings in that way. Now the tight ends is very interesting because we've seen when the Patriots were very successful with Brady, you had a strong tight end based system. And with Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, using those two guys and things like that. Now Hunter Henry and Juju Smith, I don't think those guys are in Gronkowski's category or even Aaron Hernandez. We all know about the Aaron Hernandez's life off the field, but when he was on the field was a tremendous football player. So I don't know if they're going to get that type of production, but be much better than what they got over the past few with last year, which I think less than 10 catches and less than 100 yards from their tight ends in the entire season. You can't have that. And I think it's a big indictment or big on Cam. I think what this move shows is that what Cam's a 1 year deal, but it's also this is who we're gonna bring. You got weapons now, no excuses. If you can't produce with this offense and this setup, you're not the quarterback for us. So I think it's a lot on Cam Newton to figure that out. And then you move on to some other teams in the AFC. I'm just going down the list, and there's so many signings, but nothing really stands out. Pittsburgh brought back Juju Smith-Schuster, 1 year deal worth $8 million, and I think that's a theme as well with a lot of these guys. We saw the TV deal get kicked in. They just announced it, and what's going on there. This year's salary cap is not very high because of everything that's going on in the world, and with the money limitations. We just went through a year of limited fans to no fans in the stands, limited revenue coming in. The salary cap stayed exactly the same, or in some cases went down, depending on how you finagle it. I think starting next year, you'll see the cap go back up to a solid level and then kick in a little bit more. So teams, I think, are reluctant to bring in big money to their guys, and because this year's salary cap is low. But I think starting next year, you'll see that money go back up and some more money be available. And that's why guys like Smith Schuster, even a Mitch Trubisky, sign a 1 year deal, get in with an organization, play a year out, and then this time next year, maybe you'll perform at a solid level, and you can be in the running for a multi-year deal worth a lot of money. So that's what I'm going down the list of these signings. You're seeing a lot of 1 year deals. Tyrod Taylor, 1 year deal with the Texans, $5.5 million, and we'll bring up Deshaun Watson. The accusations of his of sexual assault and activities like that. It's a I innocent till guilty, of course, but it's a lot of smoke with what is going on, and the timing of this is very intriguing. He's been disgruntled or unhappy with the Houston Texans organization, looking to move on from that franchise. And all these accusations have started to come out. And I know Watson's lawyers are denying the kind of the rumor that the Texans are involved in this. But the timing of it is now, if he's done all of these things, obviously justice should be served. But we haven't heard anything of these activities from him for multiple years. And now, when he's in the spotlight for his disgruntlement with the organization and being in a very high profile position, these are when the accusations are starting to come out. So have to be very aware and cautious of that. The timing of this is very intriguing. But as I said, if he's guilty of these deals, then yeah, it's a the reading of these with especially with the him and the treatment of his masseuses, female masseuses, is very disturbing. And once again, these are accusations, and they should be dealt with in the legal realm, and they are being dealt with. But as far as on the field, and that's where we'll steer this conversation back to. Yeah, they actually signed two guys. Well, they brought in Ryan Finley in a trade with the Bengals and Tyrod Taylor. Obviously, those guys are not in the same league or field as Deshaun Watson, but if they make a trade and move on from him, they do have a stopgap in Taylor or Finley as far as the quarterback position goes. So we'll see what happens there. I like their running back signings. Mark Ingram signed a 1 year deal for $3 million. That's not too bad at all. And Philip Lindsay, 1 year deal worth $3.5 million as well. Philip Lindsay, a Pro Bowler, undrafted, signed with the Broncos, made a Pro Bowl, 1,000 yard rusher. And I don't know, it just went south with him in the Broncos. But that's a solid signing for only one year, $3.25 million. He's a guy that I think could be a multiple year signee for double or triple that money. But I guess he's kind of playing the game, as I mentioned earlier. Signed a 1 year deal. He's going to get a lot of run there. He'll put up some numbers and maybe get a multi-year deal. So we'll see what happens there. Carson Wentz traded from the Eagles to the Colts. Technically, it's not a free agency move, but it's an offseason move to acknowledge. I think it's a good move for the Colts and for Wentz. Wentz in Philadelphia did not go well at the very end. It just went south. Not the right spot for him. It just was not a good situation. He goes to Indianapolis, gets together with Frank Wright, who was his offensive coordinator during his best years in Philadelphia. The Colts needed a quarterback and have a playoff caliber team. We saw what they did last year with Phillip Rivers. Carson Wentz, if healthy and upright, I think can be an upgrade. Now, for Wentz, on the criticism of him, last year was not very good. Most turnovers in the NFL for a quarterback, just interceptions, fumbles lost, just was a very bad year. But new city, new energy, with an offense that he has worked with under Frank Wright as a success earlier in his career, it's there for him to have a very solid run with the Colts. So I think that's very intriguing to see. They could be a division winner in that with them. I know Tennessee won the division last year, but the Colts were right there, and I think that's a very good move by them to make that move. And then it's going down the rest of the signees of what we saw going on. Yeah, and you saw Kansas City rebuilding their offensive line. They brought in lineman Kyle Long, Joe Tunney, Joe Thuney, signed Mike Remmers to a 1-year deal. Really rebuilt that offensive line that we saw get dismantled in the Super Bowl. Now, the timing for that was very bad for the Chiefs. Had the Super Bowl taking place, a lot of injuries it was a lot for them during the run to the Super Bowl. So you had a disheveled and disorganized offensive line. Now, the Bucks took advantage of that with some great performances from their defensive front seven. But I think that they just wanted to rebuild that offensive line. But bringing in some of those guys is a very good move as far as that goes. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on the AFC free agency signings. And when I do my NFC, if I have some additional thoughts on the AFC, we'll go over that in a future show. But that concludes today's broadcast. Thanks for listening. As always, go to thesportsinquirer.net for all news and notes in the world of sports. You can also go to our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Sports Inquirer. And then finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under Sports Inquirer. Until next time, good fight, good night, and be safe.